Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to another Level Up with Aaron video, Gods of Olympus video log. This is part two of a defense base building series that I'm doing. The first video was on houses and how to best use houses and what they do, etc. If you haven't already seen that video, please check it out. I think good information for all players. This video I'm going to focus and talk about all the different defensive towers and give you some tips and tricks and hints on how to best utilize the various towers to make the most use in your base. So I'll just kind of go down the list here, obviously in the building structure list here. The first one is the arrow tower. The arrow tower is a multi-target tower, which means it will attack several targets at the same time, and it has 6 of these little archers, so they're each shooting arrows from my understanding, and the total damage done is this damage up here for strength, and then the attack rate, that's how fast they shoot. So arrow towers, just as it says here in the tip, they provide a platform for archers to attack enemies at short range. So you can see their range is about medium as far as the different various building types are concerned. And they're definitely useful. I like to use arrow towers where, say, they're going to be on the edges of locations where there's a chance that they'll hit multiple gods, as opposed to just being stuck on one god or one target like the Archimedes or the Ballista. They'll hit multiple targets within the same area. So that makes them pretty handy for actually targeting the gods, because the big challenge with defense, with towers, etc., is to how can you make sure that your towers are striking the enemy gods and not just destroying hoplites either through the assists or the various Athena or Skelly spawns, etc. So that's a real challenge of defense, is trying to figure out a way to utilize your towers in order to focus on the gods. So, like I said, arrow towers, they're low damage, have decent range, but they are useful in the sense that they'll attack multiple targets at the same time. So, definitely don't overlook them in your base building design. They're kind of a decent all-around tower. They're not great at anything, but they're pretty good. And then the fact that they hit multiple targets makes them a plus versus some other types of buildings. The next building is the good old Ballista Tower. So the Ballista Tower is a huge, kind of chunk damage type tower. So it shoots off every 4 seconds, which is seems like an eternity if you sit and watch it shoot in battle. But when it does shoot off, it does huge amount of damage. So you can see here, in this case, this one's 56 plus 34, so it does 10,000 health. The only problem with Ballista Towers is very rarely, especially for higher level bases anyways, very rarely do they actually target the gods. Most of the time they are attacking skellies and little hoplites instead, and therefore wasting their big damage on one single target and not on the gods. So like I said, they're good for big damage, but the trick is how do you place them to get the most out of them and focus on the gods. Good thing about being a low level player is that when you are just starting out, a lot of the people that attack you won't have Athena. Athena high leveled up, meaning they won't have a bunch of hoplites, and they won't have Afro usually, or she won't be able to charm very many troops. So in this case, you want to put a lot of ballista towers, because most likely on low level bases, the only people on the field are going to be the attacking gods for the majority of the battles. So if you have a lot of ballistas on a low level base, they're actually very effective because they do huge damage, and they'll be on the gods in the low level bases. As you get higher up, the trick with ballistas is, I have them all spread out, but ideally, like, take for instance, if you know that somebody's always starting from one location, when the battle initially starts, there's usually less likely that there's an army built up. So therefore, like at a starting position, you want to put ballistas because they're most likely to be focusing on the gods as opposed to focusing on hoplites. That and further along in a battle, as an attacker has amassed an army, they're less likely to be focusing on the gods. They'll be taking out troops. So kind of use ballistas maybe at starting points for enemy attackers if you're in the medium or higher levels, and if you're low levels, definitely can't go wrong with ballistas around your temples because most likely they'll be focusing on the gods. Next building is the fire tower. So it sprays scalding fire to burn enemies at close range. So this is by far and away it's the highest DPS building in the game. So you can see it does, well, I mean, I guess I be careful with that because Ballista does a lot too, but the fire tower is probably the most effective for targeting gods because obviously it sprays splash damage so it doesn't get focused on the hoplites. So if the hoplites are standing within a god in a pack, it's going to kill everything. So it's going to kill the hoplites and it's going to kill the gods. It's doing a spray, so everything in its tiny little range is going to get sprayed with fire and die very quickly. So these are great to put around places where temples, I like to say, don't put them too close to temples if you're medium or higher levels because it's easy for Afro to charm them and then use them against the temple. So literally if you charm it and then it's going to burn it down, like if you have it right next to it, it's going to target the health of the usually the highest health building that it's around. It could target either the barracks or the temple, but either case, try not to put fire towers right next to temples. I usually try to put them a house out. That way, when they get charmed, they'll take out other targets before they actually get pointed in on your temples. But these are definitely very effective at nuking the melee gods, so all the gods that attack in close range will get eaten up by Greek fire towers if they're attacking from an angle in front of a Greek fire tower. So I usually like to kind of put them around places where the enemy might spend some time or even on the initial drop in. They're good for right where the starting point is of the attacking god. And yeah, the only other tip, like I said, is don't put them near temples if you can avoid it because they're charmed and they'll take them out. The next building, I'll keep going to my attack log. The next building is the Cyclops Tower. So this throws huge boulders to damage groups of enemies at medium range. So this is a medium range, probably about the range of the Archer Tower actually. And he throws this big orb and it does cluster AoE damage. So it's kind of like a mortar, in other games, etc. But it's a great addition. It's actually the newest tower that was added in the game. You can see it attacks every 2 seconds, so it's a little bit slower. But the good thing is it does take out troops. That's its main target. It's not going to do very good against enemy gods because you can see the damage is very low on it. But it is great taking out clusters of troops. And I don't know what the range is on the actual boulder when it strikes enemy troops, but I'd say it's a decent range. Like it'll usually kill a group of troops. Like you can put down a pack of archers, and if one Cyclops is by them, it'll throw a stone and it'll wipe out that whole circle of archers. So it's kind of like it's got a good range. It's definitely effective for locations where the enemy might be doing, the slow push through your base. So if they have a massive army built up, this Cyclops Tower will do a great job at clearing out that army. So they're good to put in locations where, like if everybody starts blue on your base and wipes out blue real fast, you don't want to bother really putting Cyclops Towers around it too much because most likely, it's going to get eaten up and it's not going to be effective because the only thing it's going to be hitting are going to be gods. So I could actually relocate this one. Sometimes people do slow push my blue, so I just left one here. But I kind of try to spread them out intermittently through my base, so that way there's always a location where there's a Cyclops Tower that could be hitting the troops. I kind of stacked them on yellow over here because a lot of people slow push yellow. But yeah, I try to spread them around the base basically. That way there's one by every location. So if you get them in packs of two Cyclops Towers, they can wipe out a mob really fast. So they're a great tower for clearing out mobs, not so much for the enemy gods. And the last tower is the Archimedes Tower. So this focuses the power of the sun to destroy enemies at long range. So by far and away, the biggest attribute of the Archimedes Tower is its range. It has a huge range without any houses buffing it. So they're definitely great. Once they lock onto a god, they'll stay on that god for a long range, and they're also very effective at taking out hoplites. So I'd like to say most of the time Archimedes towers, you don't want to let them get them. If you're an attacker, you don't want them to get stuck on your squishy gods like Aphrodite or Artemis, because they'll die pretty quickly under the ray, but you can see the damage isn't too heavy. So if you have your tanky gods like Athena or Hera, and you have an Archimedes tower targeted on you, it's not really a worry for you. It's really only for this really squishy, sensitive gods that you don't want the Archimedes tower to be locked onto you. But at all levels, low and medium and high, these are actually a great tower. Probably one of the favorite towers in the game. For me, obviously, range is the biggest thing. So, and I like that when they do lock onto hoplites, they nuke them really fast, so they don't spend a lot of time or waste a lot of power on like in a ballista does. When it locks onto a hoplite, it shoots this giant arrow that way overkills that little hoplite. Versus the Archimedes Tower, just it burns up that little hoplite quick and moves on to the next. So they're great for the hoplites, the little troops, and then they're also good for the gods because they're constant pressure and it's a huge range. So it's a great all-around tower. The last structures in defense to talk about are the archery range and the academy. So of course you get little archer hoplites from the one, and then you get the little melee hoplites from the other academy here. So these, especially at higher levels, but I think even lower levels, these usually are the biggest defenders in any defense. So of course they're spawning troops, and usually it's the little army that kills the attacker and not often the towers. That's the way the game works. Because of the spawners and stuff, it's easy to kind of kite the giant mob that's chasing you around. But if you make a mistake, that mob will kill you. And with all your little helpers, usually the towers are focused on them as opposed to your gods. So like I said, it's very challenging to get. Here, let me share a defensive replay so we can look through, and I'll analyze some of the towers as they're working here. But archeries and academies are actually the most beneficial buildings in your base, especially at the high levels, because the troops are going to do the most damage total. So as you can see here, they dropped in, and these towers are focusing right on Athena. She's got her shield up, so they're barely doing any damage to her. All the gods standing in the fire range are getting melted, but slow time is being utilized, so therefore they're not taking much damage because slow time decreases the damage done by all the buildings a ton here. So here you go. Ares is charging through, and I got targets trying to take him out here. The ballista, you can see it's very slow to react and change targets, even though Ares was the closest one. Whoever long he was in there, he didn't even get targeted. Look at these range on some of these Archimedes towers. They're awesome. I got the green houses by them, and they're targeting on Hera, even though she's a tanky god. They're not going to do much damage to her, but they're targeting on her far away. Here's the mob, and I actually had a couple defenders too. So here you can see the mob is coming in and burning Hawkstorm to kill them off. But at lower levels, Hawkstorm, might not be as effective as it is at high levels. And then the mob, it's going to build up. After, there's only so many troops that spawn out of the academies and archeries, so that's something to kind of keep in note. They aren't infinite. They spawn. I don't know the exact calculations for how many troops they spawn, but once they've spawned all their troops, They only respawn if the troops are killed. So as you kill the troops, they respawn back out of their buildings. But if you don't kill the mob and you just kind of let them follow you around, they won't have more additional units won't be spawning. So it's kind of a way that you can control the giant army, because they'll keep coming until they hit their limit and then they stop coming. And if you don't kill them, you can just kind of keep them in a giant pack and stay in front of them. So here's what I mean by here, there's actually a lot of troops on him, but he's controlling the mob, and now he just spawned his number one troop converter, Afro, so she really kind of keeps the defenses and everybody off of the gods. Right now, all my defense is kind of around the perimeter because he cleared out the middle with Hera here, so you can't really see. But see the Archimedes towers, they're focusing on troops, and now look at they got on the gods, and the gods are either running away from the Archimedes or they're running away from the troops. But as you can see, really, the towers, I'm just going to fast forward through the end here, but the towers aren't spending too much time focused on the gods, and the only gods they'll usually focus on are the one at the front, so that's Athena. So she's your tank god, so the towers don't affect her that much anyways, because she's got a ton of health, and she's got her Aegis, which is her shield that she can use to keep defense from doing a lot of damage to her. She absorbs like 90 some odd percent or whatever. I'm going to try to fast forward to the end here, and then I'm just going to show you the stats real quick so you kind of see what I'm talking about. And this is obviously true for high level. It changes for lower levels, etc. But you can see the number 1 and number 2 damage dealers on my base are the spawners. So there's my